Alrighty, so I think by now we all know why we're here. So we're creating some content. So I'm keen to know, to start with, how we went in the last week in actually writing the draft version of your piece of content. So Paul, how did you go with writing out your draft?
I think we started on it last week. No, I'm way behind. I still to do that, which I can do today, can't
I? Not during this hour, because we've got something else we're going to be covering, but you can certainly do it afterward for sure.
Yeah.
Yep, cool. Okay. Carol, how about yourself? Did you get some?
Yeah, I've done a draft.
Yep, fantastic. And how did you find that, having done the prep work?
Oh, much better. Like, I knew what I was focusing on, and yeah, call to action. But, I've gone back and looked at a couple of my old blogs too, and because of the new website, I've got to upgrade all of them in any case, because they've carried across very badly. So I'll be redoing them all and rewriting most of them.
And that's the thing, is you can do that.
Yeah.
And doesn't Google likes that if you go back and redo blogs?
Yeah.
Someone told me. Shane told me.
Certainly I can upgrade them. I mean, some of them are fine as they are. It's more a question of the photographs carried over all out of order and in the wrong place. So I've got to rearrange them. But when I read through them, I just think, have I got that structure, that flow? But got a draft. So
great, well done. And how about yourself, Christine? Did you get a draft written as well?
Yes, kind of. I've written a draft. Yes, as far as there's an intro and there's 3 points and a conclusion, and it's a bit messy at the moment. And I've just started to go through it. Yep. But it's getting really long. I'm not sure, like I had this idea of it just being a blog thingy, but it was getting more than, I don't know, I think it was 1,300 words or something. So I'm not sure what's kind of usual. I thought it was like 800 words was usual.
Yeah, so around 700 or 800 words is an average. You probably want no less than 300, even if it is a very short piece. You want at least 300 words. But if you've got something that's more of an evergreen piece, like something that's not just, I guess on one topic, but something that's a bit broader, or something that's going to be useful for your audience for a long time in the future, then an evergreen piece is often, 2,000 or 3,000 words.
That's good.
So, yeah, and it doesn't matter at this point if it is a bit messy still, because we will be doing some editing on it later, and that helps us refine it and adjust it. So yeah, it's fine if you've got something written. That's really good. So great. All right. So today we're going. Oh, sorry, wrong screen. We're going to move on to, I called this session images, but it's actually a little bit more than images, but we'll discuss that in a minute. And then next week we will be looking at editing, and then we'll go on to how we can promote it before we actually publish it, so that we're ready to promote it at the same time. And then obviously reviewing it after that. But we're up to that point of images today. So for this session, there's a few things that I want to cover, and images are one, but how images fit into your layout. And normally I'd have a handout for you, and I do have it ready, but it's literally a piece of paper with a square like a rectangle drawn on it. So if you've each got like just a blank piece of paper as such, if not, Paul might grab them out of the printer, just a bit A4 bit of paper. Otherwise, you have got a big flip chart behind you, Christine. You could do it on a big flip chart. That works.
I've got no pens.
I had a Nico in my bag here and I tossed it out. I thought I won't need that.
That's okay. A small piece is probably easier to manage after would anyway. Yeah. Although when you're doing this, if you do have access to a big whiteboard when you're just sort of first starting, it's good because it's so easy to rub out on a whiteboard.
Have a whiteboard, take a photo, have a...
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. your notebook.
Your notebook, yep.
Okay, cool. All right, so that's as technical as our resources get today, is a piece of paper and a pen or pencil. Because we're going to do a bit of what we call wireframing. So we're going to do a bit of like sketching out what the layout would look like, so we can then determine where we want the images to fit. If you have already thought about what images you want,
just have multiple pieces of paper. Do a lot of scribbling.
Yeah, you can have multiple pieces. I just usually work with pencil and rubber, and just change it a bit. But if you want to have a few different versions, that's fine. So it's really just thinking about, how do you want things to flow? And if you're not sure, I do suggest having a look at some other blogs. And I know we've already done that in the past, but sort of going back and looking at the ones that you liked and thinking about what was the actual flow of information through that page. Did they start with an image at the top? Did they maybe have some things side by side? Did they have some things that were the full width of the screen and some things that were only part width? So that sort of stuff. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a moment. We'll also talk about stock images versus your own images, about licensing and permission. We'll talk about file size and compression and the alt description. And then we're going to talk a little bit about a couple of extra things, which is why this session probably shouldn't be just called images. I probably should have called it wireframes or layouts or something, but also looking at font categories, links and buttons, and then how to review it. So that's what we'll work through. So the first thing is the wireframe, and I won't get you to do it right now. We'll just sort of talk about it first. Of course, if you've got ideas and you want to start sketching them out, you can, but grabbing a piece of paper and a pencil and just sketching it. If you're a color person, you might choose to grab a couple of colors and do things in different colors. But think about, do you want a hero image on your page? And often we'll see that as like a big sort of image that goes all the way across the page at the top. Now, not every blog has that, and you certainly don't have to, but is that something you want? Otherwise, you may see it to the side. So, for example, we've just redone our Ask an Expert pages, event pages, and we've put the hero image, being the expert, to the left of the page, and then the title beside that to the right. So there's lots and lots of different layouts. The other thing you can do, and what you see some people do, is sort of cut things up and stick them down. I'm a fan of doing that later, but initially just sketch it with a pencil. So do you want a big image? Thinking about images that will actually support the message. So this is where it's good to do after you've written your draft already, because you might go, oh, I'm describing something here and it's taking like 4 paragraphs to describe it. Would a photograph help me use less words and help reinforce that message to somebody? And Carol, yours is probably a perfect example of that if you were actually doing a piece about the house, because you could write probably 3 or 4 pages about how it works, but a photograph will show really quickly. But sometimes it's hard to capture a photograph of what you're actually describing. But if you can have something that supports the message, like if someone's feeling happy or sad, or it's a bright sort of piece, you might have like sunshine and daisies, as opposed to a solemn sort of piece that might be rain clouds and dead roses or something. That just getting that vibe coming through if it supports the message. So I talked just before as well about full width, and this might be based, if you have a website, you might already have a bit of a structure or a theme for your website if your images go all the way to the edges, or if there's a margin down the sides, or if they're always quite compact in the middle. The other thing to consider as well is if your audience is primarily going to be looking at your blog on mobile, will that look different? So sometimes you might have 2 images side by side on a desktop, but then when you go to mobile, they'll actually pull one under the other. But that doesn't look so good on mobile. If you've got image, you probably want image, text, image. So then maybe you'd need to rethink that from a mobile perspective. And you can have a desktop layout and a mobile layout. It just requires you to make some adjustments depending on the platform that you're posting it on. like certainly if you're on a WordPress website or something, you can definitely change that, but that's more effort. So if you can just try and think about it, how will this respond on a different size screen? Will it still look good if it shrinks down and things are one under the other? So the shape as well of the images, and, you know, again, landscape is quite common now. It can also be sometimes easier to work with a landscape image and have text above it and below it than it can be to have a portrait image and text beside it, just from a formatting perspective, because it doesn't matter then if your paragraph is a little longer, it'll still sit neatly. Where if you have an image that's, you know, this high, you have to write the appropriate amount of text to fit right beside it if you want it to have a neat flush bottom. But you can, you just have to think about that beforehand. So do you want them, you know, landscape, portrait, square, or unique? So by unique, you may see on some websites now and some blogs where the image is actually, let's say, you know, I'm looking at my sort of the shape of my head and my shoulders. And if I wanted the text to be written beside me here, you know, up to my face, but then only up to my shoulder. So I want it to, sorry, that's my dishwasher beeping. You can hear that. So, you know, you might want to fill this void with text, and therefore the image, you know, may actually appear to be a different shape. It will technically still be a block. Is David right? He's taking, sorry. I thought he was going to like tell us we're too loud or something.
Intruder.
So yeah, so thinking about that, because when you do your sketch, you might go, oh, I actually want this text to come up against something that's going to be in that photograph. Like if it's a person's head, I might want the text to come in against them, but not across them. It is trickier because websites just don't work that way. So it requires a bit of manipulation, but it is possible. So think about that. Also, based on the style, are you better to have images with nice sharp edges, like, you know, square corners, or do you want to have sort of rounded corners? Do you want a shadow sitting under the image so it looks like it's kind of popped out off the screen, like you'd stuck it to a page with a bit of, you know, raised double-sided tape or something? Do you want to have a border around it? And if you do want to have a border around your image, how wide do you want that to be? And do you want it to be a solid border, or do you want it to be like a decorative, you know, dashes or dots or double lines or something like that? So just sort of thinking about what you want that to have. Then also on your layout, do you want some blocks of, you know, a different color, maybe with a quote in it or something like that, to again help break up the written text, but not necessarily have to have a photograph or a, you know, a picture image. You might put a key statement out of the body of your blog, or a quote that someone had given you, or a quote from, you know, someone famous in the world or whatever. So just think about that. That can help break up the eye when you're reading, because nobody likes to read just this great big block of text. It's hard work. So we want to try and break it up a little bit. So when you're sketching out that, just think about that. Have I got enough eye rests in there? And then also think about where you want your title and heading and subheadings to sit. So you might have this nice big title at the top. Do you want it sitting underneath that hero image if you've got one that goes all the way across, or do you actually want it on top of it? And then, you know, where do you want your headings to sit, and do you have subheadings? Do you want them to sit, let's say, flush left, so that all the first letters of your headings and subheadings all line up down the left side of your text? Or do you actually want your subheadings perhaps to be indented a bit, and you want the main heading to be like justified to the left, but the subheading to be, you know, tabbed in a little bit? Or similarly, you might want them centered, and maybe your heading will be centered, but your subheadings might be left justified. So just think about that as you sketch it out on paper, and we'll have some time to do that in a little bit. But they're the sorts of things that we want to get. Now, one of the reasons we want to do that is so that when we're creating our images and finding images, we're looking for an image that's going to be pretty much the right size to start with, so we don't have to do too much editing. There's nothing worse than finding a beautiful image that you think will be perfect and realizing that actually it's portrait rather than landscape. So if you know what you're looking for, you can often filter in whatever image search you're going to use, and we'll talk a bit more about those in a minute, to say, oh, I want portrait, you know, or I want square, or I want landscape. And then you can not get yourself disappointed by finding something that doesn't suit. Okay, so does that make sense for everybody?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm going to be putting mine on my Google My Business site, and it gives very limited flexibility as to shape, design, size, pictures, and all that stuff, I think.
No, it's pretty good. It's just a block builder. So you can still use blocks and columns, and that's all it is. So I've got mine drawn here, but I'm just going to share. So just bear with me for a second. I did have it open. I must have closed it. Okay, can you see an image there? I know it might be a bit small at the moment, but can you see that?
Yeah,
I'll make it. Yeah, I'll make it bigger. I just want to check that it was showing.
Yeah.
Oh, it's opened in this horrible thing.
I can see it. I mean, just zoom in at the top.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
there we go. Okay, so all right. So with this one, I've just said, you can see I haven't got it going right to the edges. If I did, I'd have it, the lines just going right off the edge and nothing on the sides. So, and then I've just put this little sort of cross, like Union Jack type cross thing. There just generally indicates an image. So where you've got this line that sort of comes through here and through here. And if I knew exactly what I wanted that to be, I could write, you know, image of such and such. Like, you know, if I image of an office, then I might say my title goes here and this is centered. And then I might want an opening paragraph and I want it to be set in a little bit. So I might not want it to go right to the edge. I want it to have, we call this padding, a little bit of padding around it so it's inside, and then an image beside that. Then I might want to have this sort of section here about all topic one. So a heading about topic one, and then the paragraph. And in there, I might want to put a link out to something else, and I might know what that is, so I could write it in. And then under that, I might want to have a block, like a coloured block that's a quote about what's in topic two, or a, you know, a key line or key point from topic two that's sort of going to be a little segue into topic two and break up the I. Then I can go here, have a section for topic two, and I might want to have my heading there, and then I'll have my paragraph about topic two. But then underneath that, rather than having a quote or another image, I'm going to have a few bullet points. And again, bullet points are often inset. You can see I've got that in a bit further than the others, and they're often a little bit broader spaced. So again, just helps break up the I, and bullet points are just easier to read than a whole paragraph of text. So I can put that in. Then I've got an image on this side. So if I was thinking about this from a reader perspective on a mobile device, it would go image, title, text, image, heading, text, then a block quote. So I've got a lot of words here, something breaking it up, words, some bullet points. Then I'd see the image before I went to the heading again, and some more text. So it's just got a few of those I rests in between. Then I've got a conclusion, and then my call to action would be in there as well with a link out to something else. So that's the sort of, like, you don't need a lot of detail, but of course, if you know what this heading is, if you're sketching it out for a particular post that you've already written your outline or your draft for, you might want to be a bit more specific, but you don't have to be, because again, it's just that rough layout. But what I can do then, and I'll just bring this back in a little bit.
Joy, is this just an example, or is this pretty standard with most things you do when you post?
No, this is just a example.
Right.
Yeah.
So can I ask you about that heading 3? Why does the position of heading for topic 3 just in that box relate to what the image might be, or you've just done that for something different compared with how you have heading 1 across and heading 2 across? Just for a change, or was there a reason for?
I did it to remind me to point out the fact that if you put an image on this side and then text on that side on a mobile device, it will show the image first and then the text. If we had it the other way around and had the text on the left and the image on the right on a mobile, it would show the text first and then the image. That's actually the only reason I've done it that way today, just to remind me to talk about that.
And you wouldn't have heading 3 across the whole thing?
You could do.
Image and
yeah. Yeah, I'm not giving you this as a template or an example of how to do it, more just to sort of describe how you could do it. There is no right way or wrong way to do it, and you'll see a lot of blogs will have an image beside text. Now, yes, you want it to be relevant. You wouldn't put an image down here necessarily that related to what you'd written about in topic 1. Because that wouldn't make sense. The quote here, I've said, a quote about topic 2 because it just makes a bit of a segue. So if I've written about something and then I'm giving you a quote and then I'm going to talk about that topic, that kind of just helps you flow. But this image here, in my mind, would be related to topic 3. It could, though, be related to topic 2. Or it could be a general image that relates to the whole post. But I'd try and make it a bit more specific. So then when you're looking at that, you might go, and here my rough sketch probably wasn't clear enough, but this one goes all the way across. So when you're thinking about the size of this image, it's quite long and you wouldn't want it to necessarily be too high, but if you kind of said, okay, if this was the middle and then this was the middle, like that distance of a quarter of that, if I made that into a square, would only be there. So this is probably another half again. So we're probably going about a third. So this would be like a 3:1 sort of ratio, roughly. Where here, this one, and this had intended to be like this being about 1/3 of the size and this being about 2/3, but my sketch was very off. But then we might go, okay, well here, if this one is a full width, and I might decide that that's 1980 pixels is a common full width size, then this one being about 2/3, and again here it looks like half, so let's just say this is half. So if this is half, it's going to be maybe somewhere around about 800 pixels wide. And then you're thinking about the height of it. Now, you might already have an idea of how big your opening paragraph is. And if that was the case and you only wanted it to fit, you might actually even write out your opening paragraph in a Word document, and you've probably got it drafted in a Word document, but push it into a column and just see how long it comes down. And then you might realize that actually with the length of that opening paragraph, this image might become square. It might not be rectangle at all, and I might need a square image if I want it to come in halfway. And my paragraph, if that was a bit longer and this opening paragraph was going to come right down here, then this image could be a square. But if it's a very short opening paragraph and it's going to fit quite neatly in that space, then here again, you divide that in half, and that might be sort of like 2 squares roughly. So then your image is a 2:1 ratio. So if you were 800 across, you might be 400 high. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And then, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's my standards, 400 by 400 and 800 by 400. And
yep.
I was just thinking about this format, because I'll do it on the website in Divi, and it's sometimes not easy to.
So if you've got it drawn out beforehand, and even if you write on here, like if you decide, and it takes a bit of practice to get to know your website, and everything's different. Like I've said, this might be 1980 across, but it depends on how wide your margin is or whether you go to the full width. So there's going to be always variables. So you'll get to know your own site that you're creating it on to know, okay, what is half my width? And you can go from there. Then if we come down to this one, and sorry, I had intended for them to be different, but let's just say this one was coming in 2/3 of the way and this paragraph side was only 1/3. Then if that other one was 800 up there at being 50%, then this one, it might be 1,000 or something like that, or 1,200 wide. So it's sort of that more, panoramic type thing or something like that. So you've got a few options. And of course, if you had square ones, they're square, or portrait, other way. Yes, Paul?
If you've got, on that day, you got your image there with the heading beside it, you're with your text in your paragraph, that will be what's called word wrapping. So if it's on a mobile, let's say you had 3/4 of the size of that was the image, and then there was only a quarter was a paragraph. On a mobile, it will still word wrap and fit. It won't just squish it up to one side, will it?
It depends on how you make your site respond.
Right.
Yeah, so mobile responsiveness depends on your theme or your website. So normally, and that's what I was sort of trying to explain before, normally you would see on a mobile that the bullet points would show like across the screen, and then underneath that would be the image, and then underneath that would be heading 3, and then underneath that would be heading 3's paragraph.
Heading 3's paragraph is what I was talking about. Surely most sites that display well would word wrap, and it would fill the width of the phone. It wouldn't squash up.
Not necessarily. It depends on how it's been coded. So, but that's what I'm saying. It won't stay beside it. It will go underneath. So it's not going to say squash the image and the text into mobile still side by side. If it's a good, decent, responsive site, it'll take that image and put it above heading 3, and the paragraph will then sit below the full width of the screen, unless of course you've got a margin on them, which it'll retain the margin. So it might not go full width. It
wouldn't be it'd be advisable to have it so the text repositioned. So if you had one sentence that was 30 characters long, you would want to have it so if it did go to another line, it didn't stay the same width, and it, like if it was only a quarter of the that area, which might be three or four words across, when it goes on a mobile to below the image, I would assume that would go the width of the phone, which might be 10 words wide.
I'm not sure that we're talking about it in the same way. So on a website, if you've got your image on the left and your text on the right, and your text is in a block, which almost all of you are using a block editor, that if the paragraph is longer than the image, the words will not go under the image. Like, if that's what you mean. They'll just keep going down under the paragraph. The paragraph will get longer and you'll just have a gap under the image.
But on a mobile though, it will text below it.
The whole lot will go below.
Yeah. And will it word wrap? Is it called word wrap? Or?
No, it's not. That's what word wrapping is, where the text will be beside it until the image stops, and then the text would start going below the image like it does in a Word document. But on your mobile, it won't do that.
I think it will spread.
Yeah. Okay. I've got it.
Yeah, okay. But we can have a bit of a play with it on your site when you get to that point anyway. But each piece, and I tried to put some of them in inside another block. So you can see, like, I've got heading 2 in a block, and the paragraph for topic 2 in a block, and the bullet points below that in a block, and those two are joined together. But those 3, like with a little gap between heading 2 and the paragraph, are all inside another block. Can you see the difference there? Yeah. And sorry, I know it might be a bit hard.
No, it's clean.
So Yeah, so this here would be a section, and then this would be a module for those of you using Divi or something like Divi. Elementor is the same. So you've got a section, and then you've got a module or an element, and then you've got another one and another one. And I've just happened to butted these two up together, but I've got a gap here, but all of that's sitting inside this one. When I come down here, you can see I've done the same thing here. So these are actually inside, they're both inside one. So they will move together. So wherever they respond on a mobile, they'll move together, where the image is separate, but technically that whole row, and I didn't draw it, but that whole row of image and heading 3 would all be in one section as well. So you'd have them beside each other, and then on a mobile, one would go underneath the other, and it would be whatever's on the left will go to the top, and whatever's on the right will come underneath it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So
Yeah,
Joy,
cool.
what's the advantage of having the heading, the paragraph, and the dot points in separate modules, as opposed to just writing it with a line gap between them, however you want to write it out, tab 4, whatever?
Yeah, just again from a responsiveness, and you might want it to react differently when it does resize. So the paragraph, you might be quite happy for it just to get longer. Like if the sides come in, the text just goes longer. Where with the bullet points, for example, if they come in, you might not want the text to wrap around inside that block for each bullet point, because it might make the bullet point not as obvious. So you might actually just want the size of the text to get smaller. So like the font size. And if it's in a different block, you can do that. If it's in the same block, it's a lot harder.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah. So if the bullet points were like a 16 font on a desktop, on a mobile, you might want them to go to a 10 font so that they still just show on one line each, as opposed to wrapping around.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah. So yeah, anything that has different formatting, I suggest just make it a new element or a new module. It's just easier that way. Okay.
And then, so if you've made those, I'm just trying to think, I'm very amateur on blogs, but if you've 3 modules or 3, how do you, so if I bring in a new widget or whatever you call it, new block, how do I insert modules in the block?
So the block will be a type. So what's your theme?
Well, this.
Oh, you're Shopify now, aren't you?
No, it's not Shopify. It's Doodah.
Okay, I'd have to have a look at it to use the right language for you rather than doing that. So usually it's a section, a row, and a module. But yours might be called something different. But when you select a module in Divi, for example, you might select a heading module, select an image module, select a text module, select a quote module, and it will format it all for you. Like it's got preset formats based on what it is. You could select a map module if you need to put a picture of a map in there or something like that. So I can only imagine yours will be similar. Yeah, but we can have a look at it next week. Yeah, cool. Okay, so wireframing is really helpful. And again, the more you practice it, the better. But you might also just come up with a stock standard, this is my blog layout. And every blog just has to fit that style. And you'll learn, how much to write to fit the space. And that'll come with a bit of practice. So you can definitely do that. You see a lot of blogs that are templated. Clearly every blog looks the same. It's just the content that's different. But talking about images specifically, so stock images versus your own images, I just wanted to highlight a couple of the pros and cons. And one of the big things is, do you already have images that you want to use? And if you do, that's great. But if you don't, please don't wait to publish your blog until you have your own images, because that could take forever. So just get some stock images to start with, and you can always go back and change them later, or just start using your new ones once you eventually get them. But if you're going to take your own, that's fine. But if you're going to get some professional photos done, you know, that it might take a little while to book the time and then have the shoot and then for them to edit them and get them to you. So don't wait. The pros of stock. So you can see what's popular. And obviously that can be a pro and a con, but they're usually high quality, they're usually cheap, or a lot of them are free. You can access photos of places and things that you don't have in your life, places you haven't been, or you know, stuff that you don't have, and it's fast. Like you can just search, and you can refine your search by category and by you know, color and by shape and all those sorts of things. So really fast. The cons are the fact that it could be so popular in terms of other people are using it, and that might be to your detriment, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes just using that well-known, you know, kitty that's saying hang in there, you know, is a thing. So that can be a good thing. But otherwise, if it's something that looks kind of like what you do, but it's clearly not your photo, you might see it pop up on other sites. Obviously, they don't have you in them or your product in them. So from a just sort of not necessarily promotional advertising perspective, but just a generic sort of product placement perspective, that won't happen, or you in them. And sometimes with licensing, there can be a bit of confusion there, and we're going to talk about licensing a bit more in a minute. On the pros side of having your own photos though, you have the potential to get exactly what you want. And I do say the potential. That can also be a little bit of a con in the time it takes to fart us around to actually get exactly what you want if you're not a professional photographer, and can take you hours. We did a photo shoot in the front of Canvas Co-working last week with some food, and yeah, it took a while, but anyway, that's good. It's free if you do it yourself, or a friend does it, which is nice. You don't have to pay, and you still get what you want. You can do what you like with the images as well if you own them, and that's checking if you've taken them yourself. Obviously that's fine, but if someone else has taken them for you and you've paid for them, there may be some restrictions on that, but generally you can do what you like. So you can crop them and edit them and recolor them and all that sort of stuff, and there's no risk of a copyright infringement. And the asterisk there is unless you have paid a professional photographer to take them for you and you haven't acquired the ownership, the actual intellectual property. So just be careful of that, because sometimes you'll get images from a photographer and they'll say you can still, like, they're still owned by the photographer. They haven't assigned you the ownership of them. The cons, it requires the skills to do it and the stuff to do it. So if you want to take good quality photos, you generally need some lighting, or a box, or a setting, a backdrop, whatever it might be. So you might need stuff, and that can cost you money, or you just might not have it. It can be expensive to get what you want sometimes too, particularly if you can't do it yourself, or you have to buy a lot of things to set up the scene. And it can take a long time, either if you are doing it yourself and you keep procrastinating on doing it because it's hard, because it is when you're starting, or if you're engaging a photographer, obviously you have to wait until they're available, and then the sun has to be right, or whatever else. It can take a long time, where if you're just buying stock ones or getting free stock ones, someone's already done all that. So licensing. Now, I say here, don't just grab an image from Google. Like, don't just Google what you want and just grab an image off Google. I know you can technically do that. Like, it will enable you to search on Google and find an image and download it and upload it and use it. But please don't. It costs a lot of money if you get caught out doing the wrong thing, and we want to just encourage good practices. So if you are searching on Google, there's a section called usage rights. So if you click on tools, if you've searched, and here I just searched cat in the hat as images on Google, you click on tools, and then this usage rights comes up. And if you click on it, it says all, or Creative Commons license, or commercial and other licenses. So of course, if you're doing anything for commercial purposes, be sure to click on commercial and other licenses, and you'll realize once you do that most of those images that you just saw are gone, because they're not available for people to use commercially for free. So yeah, just be aware. And similar here, you can, filter still by size and color and type and how old it is and that sort of stuff as well. So Google can be helpful, but risky.
Joy, can you filter by images that aren't copyright protected?
Well, you have to get one that has the commercial and other license there. So this, see here, this says all Creative Commons or commercial and other.
The commercial and other licenses means they're free to use wherever you want.
No, well, not necessarily. It depends on the type of license. So you'd have to still have a look at it and see what it is.
Is it? There's not a button where you can say only show me commercial and other licenses that are categorised as free.
No. Like if you go usage rights and you tick commercial and other licenses, they're saying you can use these images that we show you for commercial purposes, but there may still be some restrictions on them.
Yeah. Rightio.
So I would just suggest don't use Google. There's plenty of other places you can get them. But this is where it does get a little bit tricky. So free stock images, you can find them. I am a huge fan of Canva. I think most of you know that. And Canva, you can pay a fee, you know, $150, I think it is around about now for a year. And you've got thousands and millions probably of images to choose from, and a good search feature.
They're all no IP attached.
Well, you're able to use them. Yeah, that's what you're paying for, is the ability, the licensing to use them. Yeah. So you don't own them.
If you're not paying license, will you not have rights to it?
I beg your pardon?
If you stop paying Canva, does that mean you have to get rid of them?
No.
You've got it for life.
Yeah. But it depends on how you acquire them. So there's different options within Canva as well. So sometimes you'll buy something for a single use and other times you can buy it for multiple use. When you buy something for single use, it doesn't mean you can only actually use it once, but you can only use it as you've downloaded it. So then if you go back and edit it into a different shape or a different size or something like that, and you download it again, you pay again, or you pay to have the right to use that image multiple times in different shapes and sizes and adjustments without having to pay every time. So whichever one you use, whether you use Canva or Pexels and Pixabay are another couple, Adobe, obviously if you want to pay $40 a month, you can access their lovely stock images, you know, so whichever one you go for, I just recommend that you do read the licensing rules on it, just so you know. It's a little bit boring, but they usually give you a highlighted, you know, top level view of this is something you can use for commercial purposes or not. Google's changed theirs in the last couple of years. It used to be like use commercially with no edits sort of thing and commercially with edits, which meant that you could download it and edit it and use it, or you could just use it as it was. They've taken that away. Now it's just Creative Commons, which is, you know, more open, and commercial, which is for commercial purposes, obviously, not just, you know, if you're doing a blog that's not about your business. Like Creative Commons is if you were blogging about, you know, your life or something and you wanted an image to go with it, that would be fine. But if you're blogging for your business and you're going to make money from it, you have to go to the commercial one. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it sounds, it's a lot more complex than I thought it would be.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, people run their businesses and make a whole lot of money from finding images on the web that somebody's used that they didn't have a license for and sending them a bill. So
target people.
Their job. Yeah, they're not targeting an individual person, but that's their job, is to find people who are using images that they don't have the right to use.
So just to clarify, Joy, if you are on Canva Professional and you use an image, is that licensed under your professional fee?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Unless the image is asking you to pay more, but anything that you can access for free is fine. But if it's asking you to pay, then you have to choose what license option you want, a single use or a multiple use.
Yeah.
So a good tip, Joy, because this is sounding a bit complicated, but a good tip would be get rid of all my other images because I have no idea where they would have come from. Just go to Canva, use the free images, don't touch them, and use them.
If you get them from Canva, you can absolutely touch them. That's fine. So you can adjust them and edit it. That's no problem. But yes, if you're getting them from Canva and they're freely available on Canva, you can use them. So that's fine. And yes, you can, you know, crop them, edit them, flip them around, change the color, take the background out, whatever you want to do. That's all okay.
Well, I'm going to just go through my images, and if I can't remember where they came from, I'm going to just get rid of them and put Canva ones in there.
Sounds like a good idea.
Or
if you
use
do,
your own images.
Well, I don't.
Alternatively, use your own.
No, just go
Yeah.
to Canva. Ones.
that's it. But that was why I had the previous slide, you know, stock versus your own, and the licensing issue comes in if you're not using your own. So just on that, if you are paying for any, and I've paid for a few in the past where I wanted a particular image and I could only find it on a paid platform, and you do have to watch some of the free stock images still link you through to something that requires you to pay or agree to a license requirement. So even though it's free, doesn't mean you can just freely use it on Pexels and Pixabay in particular. But if you are acquiring an image that has a license that goes with it, I suggest set up a spreadsheet and put the image, like a link to the image in there, and where you got it from, and a link to the licensing requirements for it, so that if anyone questions you, you can go back and say, actually, I paid for that, or this was the license I acquired it under. Because like our, you know, the fine that we got for using the wrong image once was like $980. So yeah, it was the very first image we used for one of our very first Canvas co-working events. I learned very quickly. Well, actually I learned several years later, but I found out quickly, but I never went back and changed it. So yeah, and and it wasn't even like, I'd used it on print to print some flyers, and then also on the website. And even though that page had come down off our website because it was a past event, they still found it. Yeah.
And how do they work out how much the fine is? Is it based on?
I don't know. No idea.
That's your threat to say, pay it or we're going to protect you.
No, don't even go there.
It's Dun and Bradstreet that come after you. So they're a debt collection agency. That's what they do. So yeah, I don't know. All right, I'm conscious of the time. It's already 10 to 1. Image file size. So this relates to the load time of your thing. So not the pixel size that we were talking about before in terms of width and height, although that does become part of it as well. But how many megabytes or kilobytes the image is. If you're unsure, if you right click on the image in where it's stored in like in your folders, and go to properties, it'll tell you how big it is. If you're on WordPress and you've already put it in your media library, you can click on it there, and again, it will tell you. So it'll have a number KB or a number MB, or if it was huge, it'd be GB, but that's unlikely. So kilobytes or megabytes. You don't want any megabyte photos on your website. The load time is just too long. To help reduce it, just without doing too much work, choose JPG images as opposed to PNG images. They're a smaller file size already. But otherwise, look at compression tools. Paint.net is a nice, easy one. It's free, so don't pay for it. It's free. When you go to download it, in some places it suggests you have to pay, but you don't. So find a free one. Canva, obviously, again. Yeah, gives you the option of how you want to download it. And it might just be in the pro version, but it could be in the free version as well, that there's a little slider that you can say, I want this to be a large, medium or small image size, and it'll just compress the image. Of course, you lose quality the more you compress it. But yeah, it's for web. It doesn't usually have to be super high resolution. So yeah, you want them to be small. So if you've got a fairly big image, still aim for somewhere around about 100 kilobytes. It may be more. You might not get a decent, like depending on how well the photo was when it was taken. If it's a really high quality photo, you might be able to compress it down quite a bit, but otherwise not. But if you can aim for around about that 100 kilobytes for your bigger images, and even down to say 20 or less for smaller images, that's good. Your page should load quite quickly. Of course, if you've got lots and lots of images on your page, then really look into that. Smaller will be better for load. And I also really recommend making it into the right shape. So if you need it to be, like I said, 4x1 or 2x1 or 3x1 or something like that in your size, do that before you upload it wherever you're going to put it, because often the image editors in WordPress or that sort of stuff are not great and they're a bit clunky. Where if you're in Canva, for example, and you put your image in and you make the frame, you know, the word's gone, but you know, the shape, the size and that you need it to be, and you put the image in there and you stretch it and crop it and whatever else, and you get it right and you download it as a JPG, maybe compress it a little if it looks like it's going to be too big. Then here's this one image, you can upload it into your blog, it'll fit the box you want it to fit, and happy days, you don't need to do anything else with it. Because yeah, if you're trying to muck around with it in WordPress in particular, their image editing is a nightmare. So I try and avoid doing that. So we good on that?
Yeah.
Yep.
On my website, the one that I landed with, when I import an image, it actually says, just ask me, do I want them to optimize the image size? I'm presuming it's just automatically putting it to a fairly fast upload.
Yeah. They'd be compressing it down to what they believe is a good size based on the image that it is, like how big it is to start with. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. All right. The alt description is the other thing. So we're all about diversity and inclusivity, and we also want our pages to rank well. So we want to make sure that if someone can't see, that they still know what you're trying to use to describe something in a visual way. So the alt description allows for that to happen. So if somebody's using a screen reader because they're vision impaired, then when the screen reader reads through the text and it comes to an image, it can only read what you've written in the alt description. So make sure it accurately describes what that image is representing. If it's purely decorative and you don't think it'd add any value to the person listening, then you don't have to have it in there. But you've put it there for a reason. So how would you describe it? And, you know, maybe it's a large field with a setting sun and, lots of white flowers, or, you know, a young girl running on the beach, something like that. So whatever they hear, they can, you know, make that mental picture themselves. Similarly, sometimes people with really low bandwidth, or people, you know, satellite internet or something like that, might have their settings that the images won't load because of the time and, download that requires. So in that case, it might show, sometimes you see like just a little box that is kind of like the picture box, and then it'll just have the text written beside it. So they might get that instead of seeing the actual photograph. So yeah, it's just important, and Google really likes it because their machines can easily read the text. It's not to say they can't read an image now, because they can, but they've got to guess what it is based on machine learning. But if you've got it written in the alt description, Google can read that and go, oh, you've got images of, you know, doll's house in here. So we're going to be more likely to show this page to somebody who's looking for a doll's house if you've got it written in your text and in your alt description for your image. Yes, Paul?
In my case, I'm sort of thinking I'll have an image of probably me sitting with a person, helping them to back up their computer, whatever it is. You shouldn't have, I can imagine you shouldn't have names. My name is not, it isn't pronounced correctly. It doesn't show properly. You should keep names out of it, should you?
I would say definitely not. I think you should absolutely have your name in there if you are in the image.
It'll just say it wrong, that's all.
Well, that doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah, if it gets them to about it, doesn't matter. Yeah.
That's right. And it also helps make you an authority on the topic in Google's search, so that if someone searches for, you know, Paul Balti in Google, they'd see the picture, and therefore link to the article. But if they're, sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, it'd be a picture. They search, they click on. There's a picture of me showing someone how to do something.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Okay.
So yes, I would say yes. Of course, if you're putting someone else in the picture, technically you should have their permission.
Oh yeah.
If you can identify them. All right, so then fonts. So we talked a little bit about the on the wireframe where the headings would be, but thinking about what type of heading they would be is another thing. So is this a title heading or is it like a main heading or a subheading? And then you might have heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. So these are categories that you choose in your, you know, generally if you're on a website, you can even do it in a Google Doc or a Word doc. You can select them as well. And then when you copy and paste it across, sometimes it will come with, not always, but at least if you know what they are. But you're not only thinking about the fact that it's a title or the fact that it's a heading, but what color do you want your headings to be? What font do you want them to be? What size do you want them to be? Do you want them to be bold? Do you want them to be underlined? Do you want them to be in italics? So think about those things as well, because consistency is important. So, and you want not only Google to know, oh, this is a heading 1, it's more important than a heading 3, but you want your reader to realize that this is a main heading and then these are subheadings. So just think about what they are. And then my last little note down the bottom there is not all fonts that you can access in Word or Canva or anything are actually going to be available on your website for free or at all. So if you've got access to add fonts to your website, which most do, then you can often buy the font and import it. But if it's a font that, you know, that's readily available everywhere, that's just easier. But if you have a really unique font that you want to use and you use that currently, let's say in Canva, you may have to purchase the license to use it on your website. And again, licensing for fonts differs between where you're using it. So if you want something available to use and reuse on your website, that will be a different license than if you're buying it to use on print material, for example. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yep.
it'd be easy to just use one font, because Times New Roman, the most standard font, and just use underline, italics, and sizes.
No, please don't do that. Pick a font. Pick a font.
Yeah,
Bit boring, eh?
go wild.
Just do something, but make sure it's readable. So I did throw in like heading 1 there. It's a little bit swirly and curly. It's still kind of readable, but depending on how small you make that, it would get harder and harder to read. So sometimes if they're a bit cursive, they're only good if they're big. So just be care of that. Take care of that. Links and buttons. Now, I'm sorry, is my internet lagging or is that yours?
It's fine. Your image stops, but your voice keeps going.
Okay, rightio. So I didn't do it specifically on my little wireframe sketch that I did for you as an example, but I did put like link to a couple of things in there. So internal links, make sure you've got a couple of those. It's always good to have if you're doing it on your own website in particular, because it helps with SEO, but also it helps your reader to find more information that they might be interested in. So think about what links you might want to have. That could be to another blog that you've written or to your product or something like that. External links also help show legitimacy of what you're doing. So if you're linking out to someone else, again, you might want to not link out to a competitor, but you might be linking out to, you know, someone you collaborate with, someone who can explain more if it's a technical thing. Maybe there's a journal that you're going to link to, you know, that explains more about a topic or something like that. So, or if you're referencing someone. So if you've used some text in your blog that was from someone else's blog or someone else's research, you might link to them. And then content. So if you have got a really long blog, you might want to put in some links to take someone back to the top of the page. And that's just within that content itself. So it's not taking them off to another page. It's just helping them navigate up or down. And if it's a really, really long blog, and in your opening paragraph, you might have, either written within it or sort of sitting underneath it, like almost like a table of contents, or links to, topic 1, topic 2, topic 3. And you can have that in your opening paragraph as a word that's underlined, and it would just take them down the page to where that particular topic started. And that's helpful, particularly if you're doing something like a technical document or a specifications document, then that can be good to navigate. So the sort of navigation links. And then buttons is another thing. So if you put a link in, it's usually a word, usually it's underlined, sometimes it's just bold. You can decide on that. That will take someone somewhere, but it doesn't stand out the same as a button. So if you want something to be very obvious, that like click on me, make it a button. Mind you, I am the type of person who doesn't always see the big shiny red button, but I'll see these tiny little links in the document and I'll click on those. Everybody's different. So yeah, just think about your audience. Having both can be good. So particularly with your call to action, you might have your call to action written in the paragraph. It might be a link just in the text of the paragraph, but then there'll be a button underneath that links to exactly the same place, but it's this big, bright, red, shiny button. But think about the color, the style as well. Do you want it to be round? Do you want it to be square? Do you want it to have rounded edges? Do you want it to have a bit of a shadow so it looks like it is a button that sticks up off the page? So think about that. And also the font. Again, do you want it to be like your heading font or some sort of decorative font, or just the same as your text? Up to you. And colors, obviously, of font and button. And just on that, if you're putting colors on colors, just consider, from a perspective of someone who might have some vision impairment or color blindness, are they nice contrasting colors? So don't put red on green, don't put purple on blue, those sorts of things. So think about those good contrasts of color so that anyone would be able to see the differentiation between the button, for example, and the page, or the button and the words written on it. And that applies to your text on your page if you're going to have a coloured background as well, which I'm not personally a fan of, but a lot of people do like coloured backgrounds. So just keep that in mind to make sure anyone can read it. And then once you think you've got it all worked out, so you've found the images that you want, and you've thought about what you need. If you're not confident just creating it on your website to start with, assuming it's a blog for your website, create it somewhere else like Canva, or even printing them out and cutting them out and pasting them onto an actual piece of paper. And for that, you might want to use a butcher's paper or something big, or sticking them up on the wall with a bit of blue tack to see, okay, if I do this, how does it flow? And does it read well? Does it make sense? Does it look good? And again, if you can print it in color, the appropriate colors, you can start to see that as well. But if you're confident just doing it on your website, that's fine. Just remember to save regularly so you don't lose what you're working on. But yeah, otherwise you can literally cut it and paste it, like if you're making a magazine page and you piece all the pieces together and then, have someone proofread it and, review it, move things around, and then it'd actually go to print. So yeah, but don't stick them down unless you're happy with it. But again, there's no real need. Bits of blue tack work just fine if you've cut things out. And that way you can go back and change it before you start actually building it on your site. And then, of course, once you've built it, you still don't want to publish it like right away. We do want to do a bit of editing on it and read it at least again like a few hours later or an hour later. because if you just throw it all in and publish it, you'll probably go back and read it and find spelling mistakes or grammatical errors or links that don't work or something. So it's always good to at least go and have lunch and come back and look at it again before you publish. But we'll talk about that going forward. So, and sometimes you can just sleep on it for the night and look at it again the next day and go, actually, I want it to be a little bit different, but that's up to you. So any questions on that?
I've got a couple, Joy. One is when I was doing the first blog on my new website, which was just updating one of the old ones just to try and get my head around it before today. On all the images that I put in, I resize them automatically, but then there's also this box came up that offered me the option to link the image to a website or web address. So all my images are linked to, and some of them are linked just to my homepage, from the blog to my homepage in the shop. And some I linked to the store, depending on what the image was. And I'm assuming that means if the image comes up in an image search on Google and someone clicks on it, then they know which website to direct them to with the image. Is that something that most people should be doing?
No, that's not what it does.
It's asking me to put in a link the image to a web page.
Yeah.
And it's
so
that's all my pages.
Yeah, that's optional. You don't have to. And in fact, it's actually kind of annoying, particularly if you're on mobile and you're scrolling and you get an image pop up and you pop your finger on it to scroll and it clicks and it takes you off that page to something else. So I would only use it on pages that were a bit more product based to go to the product to buy. So if it's clear that, okay, I'm talking about buying the product and here is the product. And yes, if I click on this button, it's going to take me to the buy page. But otherwise, I would not have links on my images if they were just supporting the story that I was telling in my blog, because there's more risk that someone will click on it and move away and then get distracted and forget what they were reading, than not, like actually having benefit. If, for example, though, let's say you were writing a
website that's quite
if
it might take, sorry, I was just going to say, but would it also take, does it take longer to load and everything if it's got that link in there as well?
No, the link happens afterward because it's not a fetched component, so it doesn't happen until you actually interact with it. But let's say, for example, you were writing a piece about the benefits of play to cognitive development for children, and you had referenced somebody's research, and maybe in your blog you had put in an image of a graph or something that showed the statistics from the research. You may choose, and if that was just like a snippet of it, you may choose to make that link go to the research piece or something like that. But I would, so there's a thing when you put links in on anything, you have the choice to go open in a new tab or a new window or on the same page. If you're linking anything off your own site, I encourage you, or even sometimes within your own site, I encourage you to make it open on a new tab, at least, if not a new window, because that way your page that they were on is also still open on their browser. So if they do go off and read and get distracted, then when they're later shutting down the tabs that they've got open, they'll go, oh yeah, I was reading that, and they can come back to you. But
that's Then my one other question quickly was, should you have, and certainly in my situation, a little bio, portrait and bio of yourself on a blog? Some do and some don't. And sometimes I find them actually quite useful. And like I was Googling dolls' houses for one of your previous sessions, and there was a whole section on different toys. He blogged on different toys. Obviously, it was a commercial blog, but his little bio was that he'd been a teacher for so many years, and he just specialised now in investigating and writing up an unbiased report on various toys. And it really kind of helped you understand
who he was,
why the blog was there and what it was about. And his came up on a little footer, which I presume he probably puts at the bottom of most of them. And I just wondered your thoughts on that, and how you would add a little bio, 2 lines, 3 lines, and whatever in a blog.
Yeah. So yes, certainly if you're blogging on a public site like Tumblr or Medium, then you're going to have your profile on there. So absolutely, I'd recommend that. On your own website, it is optional because you would have an about page. However, it's beneficial if you do want to be seen as the authority and the author of that article particularly, that if someone's only coming as far as that article, they'll learn about you. So yes, so at least an author link. But the benefit of that as well is if you choose to have some guest authors, you can have a format for that and you can put their details in and you know what to ask them. So when they write the article for you, then you can get their photo, get their details to fill in and have that on them. I actually, I'll just show you one that I liked today. Usually at the bottom, but it can be at the top for sure. So actually I'll show you 2. Let me just open this other one. I'll show you 2 different examples that I just have noticed in articles that I was reading today. That came to mind as you were saying that. So just give me a second. Okay, I'll just stop sharing here and start. Can you see yourselves or can you see my screen?
Your screen.
Okay.
Your screen started sharing, but nothing on it.
Can you see it yet?
No.
Just black.
I'm just going to stop. Sorry. I'll just... Zoom windows get annoying sometimes and they're not where they're meant to be. Okay, can you see that now?
Same deal.
No.
Is it
yours obviously is not black.
Is it loading?
Canvas has started screen sharing, but there's nothing inside it except for black.
Yeah, it's just taking its time.
I'll take one.
Okay. Stop drinking because that's moving around. So you can see something in that screen you're sharing.
Well, I'm sharing a screen on my computer, so yeah.
Is it just a black screen though?
No.
Right.
No, we can't see it.
Can't see it yet.
Okay, I'll just bring it down onto a smaller screen. That might help.
There is internet issues. Probably, I'm assuming that's your place.
It takes such a lot of time.
Well, it's actually telling me it's you, but anyway.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
I guess once you've done one, it's there forever. And then you do 2, and then you do 3, and then you do 4. And then you
Exactly. And whilst I'm still waiting for the Richard Doll's houses to arrive, something I can do.
So I've got a split just now. I've got someone to see me, but you continue and I'll back it up later. Right?
Yeah. Is it coming up now or not?
No, it's still black.
No.
So what is it? Is this a blog?
Don't
Can we
worry,
go to
Joy.
the side on our computer?
Yep.
Thanks, Joy.
No worries. Probably you'll need, I'll share it in the chat. So actually you've got Slack on your computer, haven't you?
What have we got?
Not on my computer. Not
Oh, no,
What do we have?
Slack. That's right. I'll put it in.
What is the web page?
It's quite long. I've just put it in the chat. So if you go to the computer that Paul left running.
Now we can
now we can see it. How to implement multiple user types with Django.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So
that's Victor at the top.
Yeah. So I've actually changed off that one. So I'll just go back to it. So it might flicker for you in a second.
But is that his, or is that a kind of public one that you were talking about?
Sorry, can you ask the question again? It just broke up.
You were talking about having the author information on a public shared page or their own page. Is that a public page?
This is his own website.
That's his page, okay.
Yep. So, but this is at the top of his post. So, so he's got his photo, his name, a little bit about himself. You can read more about him, which will take you there. And he's got all his social media handles. And it's just this nice little block that sits at the top. Doesn't really get in the way.
Yeah.
So that's quite. And then you can see on his layout here, he's got that this is a tutorial. Obviously, he does lots of different things. He's got the title, the date it was published, how long it should take to read. He's got comments and views shown there as well. Then we've got that sort of hero image and the title. He's referenced the picture. So it's from pexels.com. So there's a link there. And then it goes into the article. It would have been part of the licensing.
Okay, right.
So sometimes that's the requirement. And some people just do it anyway because it's nice to do, even if it's not required, just to acknowledge. Plus, it may be for his own benefit of rather than keeping a spreadsheet somewhere, he just makes that his practice and it's obvious. Then we can see he's got his opening paragraph. He's got a link in there as well to content within that blog. He's got this little line in here that's just like dividing between the opening paragraph and the first topic.
It's not scrolling, but that's okay. I'm going to look it up.
Yeah. So it's quite a nice one, I think, and he's got, some different things. Doesn't have a lot of images throughout until you get down further. He's got some copies of code and stuff like that in there, and does have some, technical images in there as well. And then once you get right down towards the bottom, there's some screenshots and stuff like that in there. But it's a sort of tutorial. It's a technical piece.
I've just got it here. There's names at the top.
Yeah.
There's the tutorial.
Yeah.
And then that photo, rules of thumb. So he's got rules of thumb as his title, and he's got 1, 2, and then he's got strategies. And then, okay, and then he's got, they would be like screenshots. And actually that image there that he's got, see that one up there that he's got a shadow behind it. And this is quite long. Yeah, so that one there, that screenshot, it's got a shadow behind it.
Yeah.
The jQuery fundamentals. Okay.
Yep. So that's one.
So that's quite long, but if it's a tutorial, you would expect it to be a bit longer.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was a 22-minute read. Like it said that right at the top. So on opening it, I knew it was going to be informative and have more detail. I'm not sure if my screen's changed for you now to another one.
No, not yet.
I'll just stop and try it again. So, yeah, so having a look at others can really help sometimes, but this is one. So Taryn Abrahams has written this one. I'm not sure if you can see it coming up yet.
Yeah, it's just black still, but I think it'll come in time. It just takes ages. Yeah.
Okay.
Abrams.
So it's if you search, you'd search Meistertaskers say hello to recurring tasks.
Say hello to recurring tasks.
Yeah.
Terry is nice.
Have you got that one there?
It's nearly there. Okay. Oh, it's on your screen now.
Oh, okay.
That's very cool.
So that's at the bottom.
See, now that's why you have it, because it's actually a girl. Well, is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
I like that. Yeah, I like that.
yeah, and it's not at the very, very bottom. Like there's still a bit of stuff, what else you might be interested, and sign up to our newsletter and that underneath it. But that's at the bottom. If you wanted to see the comments, you could load them. And then the article itself all sits above that. So again, we've got image, we've got text, we've got some bold. So that's another thing. It doesn't have to be a link, but you might put significant words in bold to make them stand out. We've got another image. We've got a little block quote sort of thing there of a, thing to remember, bit more text, another image, title there. And sorry, I'm going from the bottom up, but then you've got a bit of text, title, another image, and then you've got the top. And here at the top again, it's got her name at the top. So this is the...
Yeah, I think say hello. Well, it's interesting. We've got a different, that's the same address, but we've got a different, totally different screen at the top.
Okay. Not the creativity and productivity blog focus?
Yes, but the creativity and productivity blog focus has, that background. That Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Where's that picture of her down the very bottom?
It's at the bottom. So we've got a little photo of her at the top and her name. And then,
sorry. Yeah.
But then that sort of like little piece about her and a description about her and a slightly bigger photo was at the bottom.
Yes. So it's got that little kind of taster that she's done that at the top.
Yeah. Okay. And it's a link. So you could click on like her name there at the top is a link. And then you could learn a bit more about her. Again, it's got a category, the date it was published, how many comments, how many shares there at the top. She's got some social handles down the side.
So those things are automatic when you start writing on a blog, on an actual blog page.
Sorry, my internet went weird.
Just that line there of the news, the date, and the comments, does that come up automatically when you start to fill in, like when you start to use a blog page? No, that's not necessarily.
No, they'll all, not unless you want them to. And it depends. If you use a theme, like an actual blog theme, then yes, it'll have some preset fields in it and you can keep them or turn them off. But normally if you're creating from scratch, then you decide what you want to have in there. But you might have an element that is the date or an element that is the author or something like that. And just to get a little bit technical, if you're looking at a site like that and you think, oh, I wonder what that is, if you right click, if you're using Windows at least, and you right click, you get a box pop up and the bottom item says inspect. Yeah. And then if you bring up inspect, you'll have this box open to the side, and I'm not sure if mine's working for you. And there's this little box. Can you see my screen or no?
Yep. No, but we've got the elements.
We've got the side thing up on our computer.
So the top row of that new part that opened, in the top left-hand corner, there's like a square with an arrow pointing into it.
Yep.
If you click on that and then you hover over whatever it is on the actual blog page that you want to know more about. So let's say it was the date. you could click on that, and then it would tell you what, you know, what that was. So it'd say, you know, is this, what's the theme? If it's a themed thing, and this is like WordPress theme, it's a box, it's got what the font is, what the color is, all of those sorts of things. So if you see something that you like, then you can inspect it and you can make a note of, you know, maybe it's a font or a style or something, and you can have a little look at that. And it takes a bit of practice to learn where to look and what you're actually looking for. But then you might go, oh, I can do that. So like it might be about the padding, for example. And you might go, okay, I kind of like how that's got, you know, a bit of white space at the top. Then you might go, okay, the padding at the top is 35 pixels. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. So maybe I'll try making mine 35 pixels if I wasn't sure how much padding to add at the top, you know, those sorts of things.
Yeah, because that page is actually is quite the content is quite narrow in the middle. You know, there's a lot of white on the right-hand side.
Yeah.
And that's showing someone who is conscious that they don't want to do too much work for mobile, or they know their audience is often on mobile, and when they go to desktop, they still like to read like that. And most of us do. The wider you make your text, the harder work it is for someone to read from left to right all the way across, because we're being trained to read narrow.
And down.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and you can tell, the other thing you can do with this, if you're on a desktop, and again, I'm not sure if my page is loaded, but if you're in that inspect, if you hover at the top of the actual blog, you'll see it'll come up and say like mobile S320 pixels. And you can click on that, and then it shows you this is what it would look like on mobile. So it shows you the responsiveness of that page, and you can test that on your own page as well, so you know what it'd look like on mobile once you've built it before you publish it.
My editor for the blogs on this new platform, I can, at the top there's got screen, iPad and mobile, and I can check it as I go all the way through just by
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it'll bring up whichever one.
Yeah, so it's good not to forget to do that.
But just keep it simple. Keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
Text, photo, text, photo, text, photo.
Yeah,
and
no, I think
it doesn't get out of line.
That's good.
Doesn't make.
Yes.
Yeah. And once you take it to mobile, you quickly realize that something that looked like a small paragraph in a Word document where it went all the way across becomes a long paragraph when you squash it to mobile width, unless you reduce the size of your font. But you don't want to make it too small, because we still like to be able to read it.
The other thing I found just quite useful doing my blogs, which I just mentioned for anyone else who might want to do it, was that I was trying to illustrate, you were saying photos can replace 1,000 words, how they decorate the doll's house. So I had a blank canvas, then the carpets and wallpaper, then the doll's house. And rather than put up 4 pictures of that, I just used Canva to create one picture that had the 4 houses. So it's just got...
That's one image.
Yeah, it's one image, and it just comes after that bit of text, and there it is, and you can quickly see. And if they want to click on it and view in on a bigger one or a smaller one. But I've used Canva quite a lot like that or even if you want to make a long, narrow one, but it's got 2 components to it, then it doesn't jump around and it shows the same consistently.
Yes.
Yeah. So you just have to be a little bit careful with that, depending on the size you're displaying it on your desktop. So if it is, let's say you did 4 side by side, and rather than a square, and you had 4 images side by side, and that looks beautiful on a desktop, because it's one image. When you go to mobile, it'll just come back and still be 4 images side by side, and they probably won't be visible. If though,
I did check that,
I mean, if it's on mobile and you have not made that image a link to something else, someone can click on it and zoom in and then see.
Yeah.
But again, it's an extra step where if they were 4 separate images and in your on your website, if you put them just as 4 columns of 1 row, they'd show side by side. And then when they went to mobile, they'd actually sit one under the other. But again, that can be a lot of images to look at scrolling down. But people often don't mind a lot of images. They do mind a lot of text.
Especially if the images are like step 1, step 2, step 3.
Yeah, yeah. It works quite well. I mean, I've done it a lot of little promos on Instagram, just with the 4.
Yeah.
If they can see it on Instagram post.
Yeah.
And it gets a response. I just thought it's so much easier and it reduces the number of images that you're loading up.
Yeah, definitely for social media, I'd say yes.
And for the different houses, yeah.
Yeah, on social media, I'd definitely say yes. On your website, I'd say just be careful.
Yeah.
Cool. All
but
right.
on the website, 4 images, it's a lot. Yeah. If they're all big images. Anyway, thank you, Joy. Very good.
Yes. Yeah.
No worries.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Between text and images.
We always learn something.
Oh, yeah,
That's
no,
good.
that's really.
So your homework this week is to do your wireframe. Think about what images you want to use or what other features and how you want your page set out, and then find your images. And ideally, if you can get them to the right size this week, that would be great.